of Robbie and Ben Talk Prospects. Well, it's technically not the exact name of the show, but um, I am Ben, and I have my man Robbie Baseball here with me, and we are going to go through the top three prospects and the next three prospects for the Cincinnati Reds, the Colorado Rockies, and the defending World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. Robbie, how the heck are you?
I am terrific here in Canada. Terrific. I'm just having my
You're 25% better than you were yesterday. Is that
my Bud Light that was brewed in London, Ontario? And I will be switching that up to Mooseheads shortly, and for the duration of this.
Yeah.
But otherwise, Ben, I'm good. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on the big three, next three for these three clubs. As I've mentioned previously, it is hard not to love a Rockies prospect, but they find a way to make you regret them. So is there a way that the names this year are going to, flip the script for us a bit? The Reds, they've got that friendly ballpark too for us fantasy junkies. Mm-hmm. And then the Dodgers are the Dodgers, baby. So this is a good trio of teams to discuss.
Yeah, exactly. And we got Ted already showing up here. Stuart Baroa, he already wants to talk about is having a monster spring. I mean, I guess that not really on my radar, but
when we get to the Rockies, we do need to to Uncle Ted's comment here for Veen. We do need to talk about it wasn't really a bat flip as much as it was a twirl, like what a baton twirler would do, but it just went straight forward.
That is an excellent description of it, is a baton twirler. I'm used to seeing batons with marching band around here, and that is like exactly the imagery that I got in my brain is when I watch it. I'm like, dude, that's intentional to try to just get somebody to notice. And
I understand the release is like, thank goodness I did this thing. But I mean, this goes
Lord
back.
knows he hasn't done it a whole lot lately.
Yeah, I was gonna say this goes back to his draft year, and man, oh man, was I ever trying to educate people about the hype within the Rockies at that time. But they're the second team we're going to talk about tonight.
Team. So that means we got to start with our folks who have, by the way, bucket list thing for any baseball fan should be to someday go to Cincinnati on opening day.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that last year.
They do opening day right. And opening day is they do a parade, they do a whole 9 yards around it. And so we're going to open our show with the Cincinnati Reds. I mean, okay, that was kind of lame, but we're trying. So Robbie, let's start off with, can you give me who your big three were a year ago for the Cincinnati Reds?
Absolutely. Last year, my big three were Chase Petty, starting pitcher, who was a double-A at that point in time, Rhett Lauder, who had just been drafted. The talk was that he could possibly get his way or get himself all the way up into the show, and Noelly Marte. He had debuted at that point in time, and life was good for Noelly. I believe he was suspended during this, or maybe this was before the suspension was announced.
I was going to say, because I have him too, so I have a feeling this was before the suspension.
Yeah. So, but anyway, those are my three from last year.
How about this year?
This year, I have graduated two of the three. I mean, Marte did graduate from it. Mm-hmm. I'm repeating Rhett Lauder. I am adding second base, third base, Sal Stewart. And I am also adding Chase Burns, who was the second overall pick in this past year's draft. Although he is not my favorite pitcher of that draft class, he does have true ace potential, and he is the second Wake Forest player taken high in consecutive years.
Yeah.
So the program's doing well and developing, and off to Cincinnati he goes.
He decided he didn't need a national championship, so he left Tennessee and went to Wake Forest and got drafted better, probably than he would have at Tennessee. So, you know,
there you go. So the old pickup line of you're the only 10 I see, but Brett Burns had to leave in order to get himself up higher.
Yeah,
the 10 in Tennessee.
And so I like the Stewart call. We'll talk about. I mean, I don't have him in my big three. I do have him in my next three, but I'm seeing a lot of people making comments that he took a huge step forward, and I don't debate this at all. Is that last year he actualized the power that it had been there, and he leaned into it and actually produced it on the field. Now, the thing I'm saying is, okay, that's all well and good, except he had 8 home runs and
but he was hurt doubles. Last year.
Well, yeah, but in 80 games, 23 doubles and 8 home runs, and that's what folks are saying is when healthy, that he leaned into things. Well, he's only had 16 plate appearances this spring, but he hit a no doubt home run for one of those 3 hits that he's had this spring, and it looks good. We'll see. This is a guy
who else looks good that's in spring training right now that's a big fan of, that I'm a big fan of, who's got ding dongs, is Jose Siri with the Mets. 3 hits, 3 home runs. That's all he's done this spring.
Yeah.
That's how you earn center field. But anyway, to Stewart's point, I just wanted to say exactly what you just said was bang on. He was really good when he played. He just didn't play a full season.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel almost, to me, like he's a sleeper pick for a big three because they're going to want him to play all year.
Yep.
They're not going to hold back. He was a second round pick, I think, in 23. I think he was the one after Lauder.
First round.
Was he a first round?
Well,
he was
like a comp B or competitive balance. But yeah, in 22 and
22. Geez, okay.
Yeah,
okay. So he's a year back.
But he's only
right. I mean, right, because he's 21.
Barely
right now.
21. Yeah. Just turned 21 ahead of Christmas. So
mm-hmm.
he is absolutely a guy who he should be at AA and 21 all year long. Well, he's going to be 21 all year long, but AA probably most of the year just because of the glut of middle infield / third base that they have.
Nowhere to promote to.
So it's really tough to promote. But if he forces the issue, that could be something that gets a little interesting depending on where the Reds are at in July. Maybe guys like Noel V. Marte and Christian Encarnacion Strand and guys like that might end up getting shipped off because they're just cleaning house. They're looking to bring in 1 or 2 pieces, and they want to get some space opened up for guys like Sal Stewart to come in and play. So who knows? But he's an interesting one. When you brought him up, I thought, that's a guy that we haven't had. But Joe has a proposition for you, Robbie. And Joe loves his trucks just like you love your trucks. And so
importing, exporting syrup, Molson's, Canadian bacon, etc. I'm sure. Yeah, there's water between myself and America at my nearest potential point of ports. But for anyone who's listened way back to Dingers, I'm a boat guy. I can get across. My motors typically break down, so I'm going to need to row across. But I'm willing, Joe. If you meet me between Port Huron and somewhere up in, let's not get too many of the details out of it, but Lake Huron, we can figure this out.
If you get up in the get outside of the lakes area and get to the river where Minnesota and Canada come together,
mm-hmm.
there are a lot of those spots where nobody really quite knows where the line is in the middle of the river because it is in the middle of the river somewhere. So nobody really knows for sure when you're in Canada versus America. You could really play with that. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, just saying sort of thing. So let's get back to
future business.
Yeah. There we go. But I thought, Joe, that's a good proposition. I will say, Joe, if you're really hard up for some syrup, it's not as good as Canadian, and I'm not going to claim that, but the Vermont area and the Minnesota area both make really good syrup. It's just not quite at that same level. But to maybe it's your need if you need some of that good home, straight from the tree maple.
And you got to get the amber. If you're getting a lesser syrup, you want the amber. That's a little more flavor for you. But anyway, Ben, let me get us back on course, which is something I've never said before.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Tell me, who were your big three in 24, and then who did you follow up with in 25?
So I had two of the same three as you did. I had Marte, I had Lauder, and then I had Edwin Arroyo on there. And then he missed the whole year to injuries, unfortunately. Yep. But so this year I bring back Lauder. But oddly enough, for a place where fantasy owners really, really, really like, because of the hitting ability, I have three pitchers. So I have Lauder.
Wow.
I have Chase Burns, and then I have Chase Petty. And I will say, I had that down before Petty came out and averaged 97.5 his last time out for the Reds this spring, over 3 innings, no less. So held up the velocity. And I will tell you, the difference between a mid-90s Chase Petty on the mound and, when he really worked his control about 2 years ago, he was down more in the 93 to 94 range on average. And then he's just kind of been picking up that velocity as he's been more comfortable with what he did to kind of change his delivery and things like that to gain that control. And now he's popping those upper 90s again, like he was as a draft prospect. And if you can do that and add in all the other stuff that he did and keep, with a low walk rate, Chase Petty could be a really fun guy here by the end of the year in Cincinnati's rotation. But, they're going to have to move aside such stalwarts as Nick Martinez. So it's going to be difficult.
Be nice. I understand what you're saying. Yes, there are certainly, what's the kind way to say it? There are certainly MLB level starters in the rotation for Cincinnati, but they do not have the upside of their prospects.
Folks can say what they want about Andrew Abbott. To me, he's in that category where
I agree. Somebody tried to make a trade with me, Ben, for a legitimate pitcher. What was it they wanted? They wanted three. It was like a 3-for-1. It was like a 3-for-1 where they were like, I can give you Abbott and I want, oh my goodness, I'll have to look it up. But it was just one of those things where I'm like, wait, sorry, this is Andrew Abbott of the Reds. Like, is there somebody else that's highly touted that I'm not aware of under this name? Because that's not going to happen. And they were very much like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, like, look at who's coming up in that system. Do you not think they're going to clear the way? And he was like, well, I mean, every team needs veterans. I'm like, sure, but I'm not trading away, 3-for-1 for a Reds veteran pitcher. Yeah. Like that's how you lose in fantasy.
And that's just it, is those are the type of guys they have right now. That, and, I love, Britton just brought him up. So I was just going to say, I love Hunter Green. He's the one guy that I don't see for sure that is replaceable by a Chase Petty in that rotation. But Nick Lodolo flashed really good and then just hasn't ever done it since. So the guys that they have up there right now, I don't know that any of them, if Chase Petty is doing what he can do, that any of them other than Hunter Green can hold him out of the rotation. But it's going to be an interesting thing. He should start the year in AAA and he'll earn his way up, but that could be a really interesting midseason type of guy.
And this is grounds for the Reds to make a big deal, right? Because they've got a lot of guys that are up in the cusp. Like our big three are all cusp guys, realistically. Sal Stewart, as we just discussed, would be the furthest back of these guys. But the rotation being in a point where it has controllable arms, well, those are movable assets, right? Like they signed Montas last year, I'm sure, hoping that would be the scenario for them. He would ride them to the playoffs, or he would, be an asset to trade away. In this scenario, it's the same deal where they could say, well, we could bring our guys up, and they have, like, the guys that they have are controllable assets to get them something more significant back in return. So great place to be in if you're the Reds. You just need to win games.
Yeah, that's just going to be the whole thing. Is he going to be able, or are they going to be able to? That division is absolutely winnable. I don't think Milwaukee is as good as they were last year, but Milwaukee always seems to find a way for somehow. And the Cubs are kind of a half a foot in, a half a foot out right now, which
they're a hot start away or cold start away from turning around and retooling within the year one more time. Like it really depends on, I would say they're to mid-May point. If they're just 500 or worse, they're not going to be pushing hard. They're going to need a lot of X stats to make it make sense for them to keep pushing. And I don't think they would.
No. So let's go into our next three. Last year, I had on a guy who wishes he was Andrew Abbott, Connor Phillips, and I had Chase Petty, and I had Cam Collier, who had a solid enough year. But yeah, Connor Phillips has really taken a big step back. So unfortunately, this year, Collier repeats, and Stewart is also on there, like we talked about. And then I decided, just because we're not going to get to talk about enough second baseman and shortstops in this system, that I would mention one that we haven't mentioned yet, which is a good corn-fed boy from Nebraska, Tyson Lewis, their first-round pick this year.
Oh, okay, cool. Yep.
Yeah. He's got a long ways to go. Let's put it that way. There's a lot of, he's not a guy that I would expect to see in high A by the end of the year. I imagine he's going to be a slow burn sort of guy coming from cold weather, big time tools over actual skills right now. So he needs the time to kind of hone things into being a baseball player. So, but yeah, the talent is just absolutely ridiculous. And, so Joe also mentioned this, and this doesn't make me sad, because he says Collier injured his thumb today, and reports are that it wasn't good, which,
so it's thumbs down.
Thumbs down. Wah, wah. Unfortunately, too, because
hopefully it was more pain in the moment than an actual, injury, muscle strain, what have you.
Yeah. So, but those are my next three. How about yourself there, Mr. Robbie?
I am keeping time codes on the computer tonight. Pretty excited about it. Yeah, it looks really pretty. And that's why I needed to buy a couple seconds to switch my cheats. But anyway, last year, my next three were Adam Serwinowski, who was the 2022 15th round pick. Shang-In Lin, at the time, shortstop, outfielder, starting pitcher, 18 years old. He was 2023 J2 class or J15. And I also went with Carlos Sanchez, shortstop, outfielder from the 2022 J2 class, who had a $70,000 signing bonus. None of them are out by any means. I'm repeating Shang-In Lin because now he is a third baseman shortstop who is 19 years old. His OBP, which was 417, which is excellent, matched his slug. He had 12 stolen bases in 172 at bats in complex. He's ready for A ball, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do up against some, highly touted pitchers and things like that outside. I am also repeating Adam Serwinowski, now that I say that out loud again. In A ball last year, the 6'5", you're going to be shocked by this, Ben, left-handed pitcher, who is still having things go well for him. But his two-pitch approach needs that third offering, or he is risking the reliever future. But I think he's going to still be able to keep climbing until he can no longer get guys out. And the last guy I've got, and we are going to bring him up more than once tonight, is Kyle Henley, the 2023 14th rounder in A-ball last year. He's 20 years old. He had 0 errors, 4 outfield assists, and 2 double plays. Why am I talking defense? Because there must be a reason why Henley isn't hyped up like Zahir Hope is, who had 7 errors in 85 games last year, everybody. Okay. Henley's line, 280, 372, 406 in complex. got him a promotion to A-ball, and that was just for the last series of the year. What else did he do that's fun and exciting? 35 steals, only caught 3 times. He's going to go back to Daytona to start 2025. I think this is a big sleeper guy, and I understand that what he doesn't have very clearly is the power that Hope has, and the fact that when there was a trade, people started to really look into the players that got traded. That's where Ferris and Hope, who when we get to the Dodgers, may or may not come up in conversation. But yeah, very much so, Joe. Are we talking about defense? We talking about practice? Like Henley is sleeper, next big 3, personified here. He's got the tools that you want. He's got the ability to play center field, and he's not he wasn't a major investment for the Reds, but he's going to be able to continue, I think, to succeed. Now,
Georgia high school boy, I guess I don't know off the top of my head where he was committed, but 6'2", 180. So solid
real
size
nice
for a guy with that kind of speed. Almost makes you wonder, 17 extra base hits in 57 games last year almost makes you a little bit wonder if he needs to tap into that better. But at the same time, that may have
been why he stayed at Complex as long as he did.
And that's just it. And that's okay. We constantly talk on here about nonlinear development, and a guy like that who's got the frame but really is still working on things. Yeah, that's absolutely a great example of a guy who's probably going to not be your normal development path and speed. He's going to probably take some time at each level, but I like to tell folks, one of the guys that he's one of the elite players in Major League Baseball right now, but Freddie Freeman on the way up, that swing, nobody liked it. And it took time at each level for Freddie to time that swing up with the new levels worth of pitching. And he would come up. The Braves did this every year, it seemed like, with him, where he would come up for an introduction to a level and then return to that level the next year, and he would absolutely rip it up. But they would keep him there even as he was ripping it up until it was just enough time to where he could get an introduction at the very end of the year to that next level. And he would struggle. He would spend the offseason working on the swing, doing what he needed to do. But Freddie absolutely has one of the rare, unique swings that you'll see. He isn't a cookie cutter swing by any means. But
that's the same deal that they did with Judge. Not to say that Henley is somehow on this same path.
Yes, and that's just it. We're not saying it, but it does. You don't assume a guy just because he struggles at one level is going to never make it at that level. And also, each guy has his own development path, and so.
So Ben, let's get into some other Reds.
Which I'm going to highlight this because
thank you, Joe. That was the next guy up for me.
Yeah,
next guy up on the next 3. And why would I not mention him, Joe? And if for anyone's like, who's Joe? I don't understand what's happening. Why are you referencing people that we're not listening to? Because you got to sign up for the YouTube channel. We are inching our way closer to 1,000.
So
Pallazzo podcast. We are within arm's reach of it. And Joe is in the chat right now, and he's making comments, and just like many others are, and we thank you guys for doing that. And it's fuel to the fire for us. It makes this podcast very different from the others, where they may or may not do this once in a while. This way you can interrupt with your thoughts and opinions, and if we agree or more likely disagree, we will bring it up. And for me, Alfred Dunno, the 19-year-old who's at single A, he's a catcher. So that's why I didn't want to mention him, because I felt like I was getting too catcher friendly in recent Big 3 Next 3 episodes, just bringing them up like they're real assets. They are the Bitcoin fantasy baseball.
Now, Robbie, what if I were to tell you that there's every bit a chance that Duno by the end of next year may not be a catcher?
Oh, I would totally understand that.
Yeah. He has had some significant injuries, and from what I've been hearing and reading, there is a concern that he had some lower leg stuff that might make it difficult to continue as a catcher.
Just crazy for a teenager.
He's not tiny. That's the thing, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be one thing if, this is your normal catcher build, but I was just going to pull him up here because He is 6'2", 210, and he looks every bit of 210. And frankly, 6'2" might be a little shy. So that's a tough body style to crouch down every pitch. It will take its toll eventually anyway, but if you've already had some lower leg injuries, it could be a thing. But that bat, folks, this could be a similar situation to like a Ralphie Velazquez, who, when he first came out, you're like, yeah, catcher. I love the bat, but man, he's going to be a catcher. That's going to do things to his body. Now that he's moved out, he's developing very well as a hitter. And I think Duno could do the same thing, but I don't think they're quite yet ready to give up on the catching dream.
Yeah, he is a quality catcher. Like, he has the ability.
Yeah, when he's back there, absolutely. Yeah,
it's just that hit tool is that power is so good that perhaps you want to make sure, like you said, you don't risk the ability for him to develop offensively because you're trying to maybe force something for him, or you could accelerate him, and then he's going to get ahead of, he's going to be so far behind the pitchers at the levels he's at that he wouldn't reasonably able to catch them. Unless he's a super talent and able to kind of manage that, which at a young age is definitely difficult to do. Talk to Ethan Salas about that. So anyway, other fun guys they've got, Julian Aguilar.
Well, oddly enough, they're going to be kind of all up the middle. Isn't that interesting? Edwin Arroyo, who we talked about from last year, lost this year to injury, really looked good in the AFL on the offensive side of things. A lot of mixed reviews on his defense, and folks not quite sure where he's going to fit now defensively as they watched him. But remember, that was after a year where he didn't really play all year long, and then he goes to the AFL and was playing around the infield at different spots a little bit. So, yeah. Sammy Stafura was 23 second-round pick out of high school in New York. And, man, everyone I talked to just absolutely raves about his raw defensive tools. He's had some, 18, 19-year-old stuff as far as making decisions about when to throw a ball, when to dive, when, all those sorts of things. But, man, when he's working, it looks really good at shortstop. If nothing else, he definitely could be an excellent third baseman or second baseman defensively. The offensive side, there's an era, you remember back when Jose Reyes and Jimmy Rollins were kind of going strong, and you had guys who were, 10 to 20 home runs, but they also got you 10 triples and 25, 30 doubles, and then 30 plus steals. That is the type of offensive profile that Stafura has. There's not a ton of over fence, but which you would assume he has some really strong line drive power, and you almost wonder if when he gets up to Cincy, that doesn't tick up just a hair. That park's going to help him. But here's one of the more fun name ones, Bernard Moon, 23, 16th round pick out of high school in Georgia. And this is the Cincinnati Reds system version of Luis Arias. Very little power, not a real good base stealer, but contact skills for days. So, puts the bat to the ball a lot. And so an interesting guy just to kind of watch and see. I think he'll be first year in full season this year, or he might have gotten a taste of it last year, but so that'll be a fun one. Then Ethan O'Donnell is the last offensive player I'll mention here. 23, 6th round pick out of the University of Virginia. And, they have guys like Blake Dunn a couple years ago who really put up big numbers. Ethan O'Donnell had really, really big numbers last year. Let's see what he does in upper level ball. But they seem to kind of have a lot of guys with that type of ability. I mean, even in the majors, you could argue guys like Friedel were a guy like that with, 10 to 15 power at the absolute max and 30 steal sort of ability, but they're usually a platoon type. And so they're never going to truly hit those type of numbers. And so pitching wise, Ty Floyd, exists.
Hold on.
Oh, okay. Okay. Whoa.
I got some offensive guys to mention here. And these are the we loved them. What happened, guys? So we've got Rhys Hines. Don't give up, everybody. He just didn't get enough time last year. So what needs to happen? Will Benson needs to continue falling off a cliff, and Hines might be able to get the next man up duties. Blake Dunn in the exact same situation as Hines, needing others to fall back for them. Now, Hines did well in his debut. Dunn did not, but I think Dunn might be a little higher on the pecking order. And then Jacob Hurcher-Busi, which is, of course, not pronounced correctly, but I don't care. He's 27 years old. He also came up last year. That could be a replacement outfield that would be the envy of other AAA organizations. I'm looking at you, Blue Jays. And right now for Cincinnati, they're almost in the way of what they would want to push up the next level. So there could definitely be some Reds moving in trades as they see things happening. But I wanted to make sure we did mention those guys because they are all players for fantasy that people are looking to roster in or get as that last guy in the trade. And I think it's all possible. And Cincinnati's been able to make fantasy assets out of duds, Will Benson being one of them, but it's maintaining. And I don't know if any of these guys with Cincinnati have the ability to do that.
So Britton mentions a Blue Jays question since you brought it up. Here's a guy who actually might be better than one of those guys in the Blue Jays AAA outfield to start the year, and that's Alan Rodin. Who I like a lot. I think he's probably destined to spend quite a bit of time in Toronto this year after they sell off everything in July. But Arelvis is probably your guy who gets the most plate appearances before July, and Rodin might be the guy who has a for sure starting job after that, and so therefore you might lean on him.
I mean, in a perfect world, Ben, they make deals earlier than later, and not in the sense that like they're trying to lose or whatever. But if something comes up where somebody's giving them a realistic offer, they don't think that they've got a way and a path to the playoffs or this or that. They have a veteran pitching staff, and now Scherzer added to it another like excellent, future Hall of Famer veteran. But they don't have a complete offensive lineup. And if somebody's offering, like they've got tanks in contracts, like no one's going to take on Springer. The whole talk is Vlad's out. Like one of the coolest things that they could do for their organization is trade Vlad and one of those contracts that they don't like, whether Barrios is, no longer determined to be a good asset in his contract, or if it's Springer, or, you name the guy you don't like, you could find a way. Gossman, maybe you don't want to keep him, or I don't know. But there's money you could get moved in a Vlad trade where he's still not necessarily going to sign with that team that could help you and open up spots depending on what they do with that outfield. That's why I don't think it's Rodon. I don't think unless there's a couple of injuries in the outfield, I don't think it's Rodon. I think it's Martinez because they might actually move things around so that he's got a position. He's got a starting position rather than just, a guy. I don't think they want to bring him up and put him on the bench. Rodon? I think they could. I think they could Schneider him and say, you can be part of the team and we'll see what we do.
I like him too much to see him on the bench. I think there's enough of a
I like him, but
I've
seen this happen.
Oh no, I get it. So are we ready for some pitching?
Yeah, we should go quick because the Reds have earned 33
way
minutes.
Too much time.
Way more than they deserve.
Ty Floyd is we haven't seen him yet. He was 23 first round pick. He does still exist. I've seen video from instructionals, but I really want to see him on the field. Christian Lopez, left-handed pitcher that they signed out of Mexico in 23. He repeated the DSL and had a really good statistical year. It sounds like this is the profiles that they usually call it is a college lefty, low 90s fastball, throws the kitchen sink at you, but he does have a really good ability to, pound the zone with that. You might have something there. Last but not least, I had Adam Serwinski in here, or Serwinowski, but you already mentioned him.
20 years old.
Lovely. Jose Acuna is the last one that I'll mention, and he was acquired from the Mets. He was originally a 2019 IFA guy from Venezuela. He does not catch Britain, but has had some major health stuff along the way.
Yeah, he hasn't got to pitch enough, but could be good.
I mean, this is a guy who has control issues that are stopping him from maybe being a number 4 type of guy, but the stuff is there enough to where if he can clean that control up just a little bit, he could be a really effective reliever in the modern game. And so just someone to keep an eye on. But that's enough Reds talk. And
also, we got to have one more because I didn't mention it, and somebody else will say, why not? Cooper Bowman, Rule 5 pick.
Yeah. Yep.
We don't know. We don't know what's reasonable to expect. There is nowhere for him to play, but they very well may do it. And yes, and Joe's saying Luke Holman adds velocity. There could be some good there. I totally agree. I picked him up late. He was a not a soft tosser, but he was not known as a legitimate SP3 type prospect. He was kind of one of those SP4/5s that falls in all your drafts because he doesn't look like he's got the best stuff. Hunter Hallman, similar deal. I don't think he's been highly thought of, and I think he could still chug along within their system too. But anyway, let's talk about real organization. Let's talk about the Rockies, baby.
Woo-hoo! Well, yeah, you're quicker than I am. There we go. There, you got to get that in before we can officially talk about anything Rockies. So, Robbie, tell me, last year, who were you high on in the Rockies system? Who are you having a Rocky Mountain high about?
Oh, thank you for saying that. I was going to have to introduce it that way myself at 36 minutes and 40 seconds. Tick, tick, boom. So last year, my big 3 for Colorado, and disappointment. I had Grant Levine. I understand when I made the pick, I was arguing that like this was an opportunity for Grant Levine to like make it happen. And you know what? I just picked the wrong guy. It was Toglia. I was off by a first round pick. Off by a year.
Yeah.
So Toglia made it happen, although the line is weird. Everybody in fantasy now loves Toglia and thinks he's going to break out. But Levine bottomed out, and I don't even think he's with the Rockies no more. The other guy I thought was an up-and-coming first baseman for them, Brian Betancourt. DSL guy J2 guy in 2021 was in the DSL, came over. We did talk about him in season, and he was having some troubles. And I had said, you're coming over. I remember getting into it specifically with him because this was the thing where I talked about coming over in the culture shock and all those things. He's 5'11", 170 pounds. He was a lefty, or is still a lefty, and he killed the DSL in 2022. Came over stateside, went straight to A-ball. Didn't do complex, no rookie ball, straight to A-ball.
Something the Rockies like to do, but so far.
Milwaukee gets praised for it, and the Rockies are shunned for it. So,
I like that.
If you're wondering what we're laughing at here at 38 minutes and 13 seconds, like and subscribe on the YouTubes, and you can read the comment from Britton Allen and find out. And the last guy I had was Ryan Ritter, shortstop. He was a 4th round pick in 2022. I thought Ritter had some good upside, and I thought there was the ability, not necessarily at shortstop, but the ability for him to find at bats in MLB. This year, my big 3 is completely changed. I've got Drew Romo, who did have his first little tea sandwich. And yes, I just talked about catchers, and then I put one on this list. But it's because I think he's of all prospects, the best position to be the backup type AAA starter this year and then become the starter opening day in 2026. I don't see the other organization that has a mid-30s, Jacob Stallings guy who's going to have one more year, and that's probably it. He got ready last year and just it didn't come together. And Stallings had his career year last year, which I think is repeatable for him this year. But that doesn't mean he's going to continue to get every day at bats if the Rockies are out of it in May, the second week in May, and then come September, they don't necessarily want to keep giving Stallings unless they've got a Cito Gaston who wants him to hit career markers and weird stuff like that. I remember that happened with some catcher the Jays had, who they kept putting him in until he got his 20th home run. And then they put whoever, JP Arencibe, whoever was the next guy, came in and did it. That year, the Jays had like 6 guys that hit 20 dingers. It was weird. They sucked, but Cito Gaston was like, home runs. So anyway, Jacob Stallings is currently atop the roost. Drew Romo, next man up. Seth Halverson, relief pitcher, 24, came in last year, had 2 saves. He was drafted in 23 in the 7th round. I'm pissed that I was only able to get him this offseason in one dynasty league. And one guy took him in a 30-team league, took him in the top 35, which I can't believe. But
I have seen that.
When you're in a points league, this format in particular, I don't blame the guy for doing it. It just sucked because I thought I could get him in like the 5th round, 6th round. Anyway, did you know, Ben, that Seth Halverson is so good and so confident that he was drafted not once times, not twice times, but thrice times? 3 times he was drafted.
Yeah, I remember reading that when I was going through his profile because it's a solid profile overall. I think he could be a very good reliever. I think there are a lot of guys. I have a personal love for Victor Vodnik, because he sounds like a Russian villain.
Ideal.
Because he's a former Braves guy who I really enjoyed, obviously. But
there are no more Russian villains, Ben.
This is true. I love the Russians.
USA.
Hey, comrade.
Russia, good.
All right.
So anyway, so Halverson looks to be the closer apparent with Tyler Kinley, which is another mid-30s experienced MLBer who could help to guide him. Halverson has been a higher walk guy, and he came up in MLB and got it together. It was very like 12 innings, something like that. But he's typically been like an 11K to 9 guy, which could be great. But I would settle for 9 to 9 and less walks, and whenever the Rockies are in a position to give him a save or for him to be able to get a hold and then go into extra innings. I love that for him, and I think he could be a real good fantasy asset moving forward. And then Chase Dollander is my other guy who was a 1st-round pick in 2023 at AA. He's a real deal. Limited in AA in 23, 118 innings with high A, but limited hitters to what was it? He had 30 innings and 58 Ks. That's what it was. Sorry, I've messed up what I've written here. He's also been battling hard in tough parks. So we've talked to the last big 3. We were talking about ballparks being a factor. This is with Arizona. This is the same deal. Ballparks can be a factor here, but he's working through it. And Dollander is going to have to beat Coors, which is going to be the hardest challenge. And we've yet to see anybody do it for any consistent period of time. But as a prospect right now, he still looks good.
Yeah. So last year, you're talking, you reloaded your entire big 3. I actually am repeating 2 of my 3. I had a Dale Amador, I had Yanquiel Fernandez, and I had Chase Dollander. And I am bringing back Dollander, and I am bringing back Yanquiel, who that's the one I'm a little actually. Good Lord, I brought back all 3. How lame am I? I just realized that I actually have Amador as my 3rd.
Especially because you were selling it to all of us like you had someone new.
Yeah, which I don't. How lame am I? But Yanquiel had a really solid AA year. And folks, of all of the Colorado parks, the most neutral is their AA park in Hartford, which still is plenty hitter friendly. So the fact that he was doing it there, I thought, oh, great, he's ready. And then he just kind of fell flat on his face in AAA. But he is a potential power hitting outfielder and can handle the defense in that big park. It's going to be interesting to see if he gets the time in the outfield there, because he has some really strong platoon splits, and I'm a little worried that might be something, but it's the big side of the platoon if he gets up there. So he's a lefty hitter. He crushes righty pitching. That's a good thing. But when you can't hit the other side, then that does limit you to a 450 at bat sort of guy rather than a 550 to 600 at bat guy. So
the only saving grace is on a non-playoff team. They might be willing down the stretch to just put you in. but it does at the same time expose you, and then in head-to-head make you quite risky, depending on who you're going to set up for the weekend series or things like that. So,
and Amador had a really, I mean, seriously, everyone they brought up, the Rockies, just did not debut well. I mean,
yep.
Romo was having a very solid AAA year. Amador was having a very good AA year and came up and just was not that. And then he went back down, and it carried through with him. He did not finish the season well in AA either. So, just the Bitcoin and fantasy. Amen.
I just saw that got put in there. I love it.
But Amador is another one that he's gonna be right on the cusp, and if they do anything like moving a guy or who knows what at the major league level, Amador is probably the guy who gets a chance to take that spot.
Right. It's Ryan McMahon, right? Like Ryan McMahon's the logical guy to move out, and then you could either do a shift and again, like what's up with Chris Bryant? Let's hope Chris Bryant can have a healthy year. Not that they would move the contract, but just for his sake to have a healthy year as possibly a first base DH type. And then if you were to move a McMahon, if Estrada takes off at second base, or if he falls flat, there's another position. Now, that's, a couple spots within your infield you can move, and then injuries can always play a factor whether you're banking on it or not. But yeah, like there's talent. It's a matter of who's going to get the at bats, and when they happen, who are they going to give them to? Really,
exactly. So last year, I went with 3 outfielders in my next big 3. I had Jordan.
Are you going to the next 3? Are we going to that now?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
I'm hollering that out so we can kind of make up some of our elongated time that we spent on the Reds.
I can't believe we're going long on Reds and short on Rockies. Oh my God.
Which is that? Yeah. I mean, but Jordan Beck, Sterling Thompson, and Zach Veen, which, probably made Chad really happy to see that I had Zach Veen on there. But Jordan Beck got up to the majors. It wasn't pretty, but he did get up there. Yeah. And Sterling Thompson didn't completely fall in his face, but, he hit his chest. So, I mean, it's pretty close to it. So, that's, yeah. Let's just say that trio did not do as I expected.
Which, again, that's Rocky prospects there.
Exactly.
It is par for the course. The odd guy beats it. But generally speaking, they are toast by the time they hit MLB. This year,
I am going with Charlie, first round pick, Charlie Condon. Then I've got Cole Keurig and lefty slow pitch specialist, Sean Sullivan.
Cool. Okay.
So
I like that. I like that we have some difference. And the one guy that we have is our shared next 3. I thought you may have big 3'd him, and but I'll mention him in a moment. So mine last year, I was just as successful as you were. Mason Albright, who came over in a trade from the Angels and was a high school pitcher that signed over slot, and everybody got real excited. Like, oh, he could do this, oh, he could do that. He can't. He's a softy throwing pitcher. He's not a hard ball guy. I think he's up in AA now, maybe. So he would be your Kyle Freeland line in an ideal scenario for him right now in MLB, which is your absolute last pitcher and or your 2-week guy in a weekly lineup where he's got a 2-start week. You'll put him in for that. But typically you're not really going for Mason Albright. But he was thought of much higher, 2 and 3 years ago. Yep. I do have Yankel Fernandez, I did last year have Fernandez up from the 21 J15 class. And then I also threw a dart on the board and it hit on Kevin Hidalgo's name, who is from the 2022 J2 class. He was a popular guy in a couple deep dynasty leagues of mine, which I thought was interesting. So then I watched some tape and I'm like, oh yeah, he looks interesting. It looks like he was ready to take off in the DSL, and let's see how that all converts over. So I have cleared out some of that J15, I will now call it love. But it hasn't completely left me, Ben. And that's because Robert Calise is on that list. That's the right guy from the 2022 J15 class. Calise kept up his DSL line and finished 24 with a 344, 446. Are you ready? 634 line, 12 home runs, 15 stolen bases. Very exciting. Yes, very exciting. And yes, he needs to sort out his defense. You know who he's not? He's no Henley, right? He's no Henley.
There you go.
The man makes some errors out there, but we love that plus bat, and that's great. The next guy I have that you also had was Charlie Condon. My note on Condon was he was definitely the early fantasy 1-1 in the draft before Sasaki officially signed, but also he ended up, and I've done this, I've mentioned this before. I've got a FYPD ADP or first year player draft average draft position. We're now into March, so I think I've got about 14 different drafts that I've accounted for all the first year players, and he is averaged 6th, which is a big drop back when you get into a larger sample of drafts. But it's honestly, because he fell flat on his face after he debuted, and that's okay.
I would say that's actually not a bad spot based on what he's seen so far.
You know, and now we're into spring.
Yeah.
And, you know, he can get an opportunity to right the ship and then start the year off fresh. Like, they can be long years. Your draft years can be long years. You're pushing to start the college season. You're going through college. You also, depending on your level of interest in education, you might be trying to complete courses. So you could have a heavy workload. You know, I work at a university that's big engineering, math department. Like, students are studying a lot. I'm not saying that they're not doing that if they're trying to be MLBers, but, you know, their course career is different. So we'll see what a full season concentrating on professional baseball does for Condon for a rebound. And the last guy I've got is their future third baseman, Ben. It's Kyle Karros.
Yeah.
22-year-old, 5th round, 2023, MLB bloodlines. His brother's currently in the Dodgers system. He's got power today with the hope of more tomorrow, and stolen bases, 15 home runs last year, 12 stolen bases at high A, which as a 22-year-old, I think is what he was last year, 21, 22, is right where you want to be for the age. Of course, you'd always like your player to be younger than the age they're at, but that's fine. He's excelling for his age. He should move up this year.
Before we get into too much else, we've been prompted, and I forgot before we got into
that's why I asked you if we were going to do it.
Yes. So we do need to take a commercial break, folks.
Need a place to go after a hard day's work? Well, head on out to the Sundowner for the classiest, sassiest experience in French table dancing. The Sundowner, Lundy's Lane, Niagara Falls, Canada, open 6 days a week, noon to 1 a.m. Come in for a great lunch special or a full course meal anytime. Always full bank exchange on your currency. The Sundowner, an easy drive from where you are right now. Visit us soon. We've got first class sass.
That is amazing.
Yes.
That
now,
is absolutely.
If there's any Cinema 9 fans out there, you know exactly what's going on. And if not, go watch it. That's right, Joe. As I mentioned, that's a real life strip club. That is known as the classiest place in Niagara Falls to go and see some titties. And speaking of class, Ben, let's transition to the Dodgers.
Well, I was going to say there's just a couple more.
I'm sorry, we didn't wrap up Colorado.
Yeah,
that's right.
So, but you mentioned a lot of my hitters that I was going to bring up. Although we didn't get into Ryan Ritter, you had mentioned him as someone you had last year.
Yeah.
He is just kind of a steady Eddie. There's nothing really that's catching your eye about him, but he's not fallen on his face yet. You know, which is something Rockies prospects tend to do, but he hasn't. He's just kind of, he's an average guy. You know, he's, you know, your average white suburbanite slob, you know, he's just doing that sort of stuff, working his way up.
It was that he had that huge 2023 first half, Ben. That's what it was. I'm just trying to figure out where it was.
14, and he has been a streaky player.
A-ball.
But if you go overall, his end of year line is just kind of consistent every year. He has his streaks. You know, Dansby Swanson is very similar. Dansby has incredible streaks. Profile.
Yeah,
I mean, Dansby has really big streaks, but at the end of the year, you look at it, you're like, oh, well, it's 260. It's solid power, solid steals. Right. Okay, yeah. So,
the disappointment though with Ritter, Ben. Just the disappointment with Ritter was the fall league. That was his opportunity to kind of like make up for not having the power he had in 23, and he just had a bad fall. Now, again, end of season, he didn't have a full slate of games, so I'm sure he had some injury somewhere along the line. But I think that's downed his stock. Not to say like run away, but it might make him a little easier to acquire now.
Yeah. Jared Thomas, I'm going to talk about 2 24 draft picks here. second round pick out of Texas was a guy I really, really liked. He can really go get it in the outfield. Has some power speed combination, but he can also miss the ball a lot. So it's going to be something to watch to see how that develops. I'm guessing he's going to put up a monster stat line this year in A-ball, and then we're going to have to deal with it. How real is that?
Note I've got on Thomas is ideal platoon player, but he's also a lefty bat, so it doesn't work with Hernandez.
Their other 24 guy that I really like, good corn-fed boy here from Upper Midwest is Brody Brecht.
If only he didn't go to Colorado, right?
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, you can make the argument this is the best stuff in the entire 2024 draft. Needs to control it better, but you're also talking about a guy who was a legit Big Ten wide receiver for 3 years before he gave that up his final year of college. And so that's he's an athlete. He absolutely could make those changes, focusing completely on baseball going forward. You just don't know, and I really don't trust that the Rockies are going to bring it out of him, unfortunately. Another guy that I really liked last year, before he got to be a Rocky, we're going to have fun with this. Eugenyer Herrera, Yujanyer.
Yeah.
They got him from the Brewers, and he was having a really good 24 because he's always had the stuff, and he finally figured out how to plug it in well to potentially be a starter. Probably still a reliever profile because it's still, even with the improvements, it wasn't probably starter worthy control. And definitely in Colorado, they're going to look at that and go, this guy could probably jump up the upper minors next year and be in our bullpen by the end of the year and fast track that rather than be patient with it.
He's young, huh? He'll be playing this year at 21.
Yeah, young guy, very solid. It's just it's frustrating to see that guy end up in Colorado because I was like, he took a big step. And especially when you're in the Brewers and you have the stuff that he does and you take that step forward with control, you're like, ooh, this could be a fun organization to develop this arm. And then they traded him away. So, but that's my Rockies extras. So I don't know if you have any others.
Just before somebody says, why did you crap on Hidalgo and then walk away? I didn't. I just simply said that he was part of the next three and he's not repeating it. But his line last year, just so everyone understands why he didn't repeat, his DSL line that got me stiff was 12 home runs, 13 stolen bases, a 3-4-5 line, 300, 400 OBP, 583 slug. That's what he did. That's what I was excited about. Then he went last year and only had in 50 something, 60, almost more at bats, only had one home run. So it was the fact that all of a sudden he got to stateside competition or breaking balls, whatever you wish to say. And he has had to make a major adjustment. The power just left him last year. It's not like he picked up, more doubles and triples. He was almost bang on in line with the rest of his offense, but the home runs were gone. So he did okay, and we'll have to see if he can redevelop the power, get that back. But that was one. Greg Jones I did want to mention because that was a trade. Can't remember who Tampa Bay got, but they traded Jones. It was Tampa Bay, right? Yeah. Tampa Bay traded him last year, and people got excited that this could be a guy who's got a position and whatever. And I said, no, there's other Rockies that'll block him. And he did get to debut. Yeah, he did get to debut, but he got 5 at bats. So Jones is still potentially a guy, but it doesn't look like it's, going to be beautiful for him in any way. And I don't know if we mentioned, what was the guy I was just looking at here? Cole Carrick. Did you mention him?
Yes. Actually, I mentioned him, but we didn't really get.
Did we talk Zach Veen also, or are we just done with Zach Veen?
Yeah, he's on. Yeah,
let's just not do it. Let's not do it. Yeah, it's not worth it.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. Let's talk about a much more fun system.
Absolutely.
Joe did let us know that it was for Joe Rock, which there you go. There's a great name.
Oh, right.
Greg Jones for Joe Rock is the two most beautiful names for a trade right there.
Especially when you're talking about Coors. If only it was to Milwaukee and it was Coors and Miller, Jones and Rock. It's all it all works.
So on that note, let's talk about the defending world champions and the reason why they continue to be really, really good. And no, it's not deferred $400 million contracts. Well,
although it helps.
It's not to say it's not only
that's
that.
Their newest. That's their newest trick.
But it is that they do a really tremendous job of just stacking their system with future players, and then not only do they get talent, but they actually develop it. It's a really, really odd concept considering the club we just talked about. That Colorado gets talent and then goes, well, you're really good at 19. We'll see what you if you're still that at 22.
Coach says show up for BP if you wanna.
Yeah.
We don't watch tape.
Honestly, Colorado's system to me just has the feeling of you got a guy standing outside the batting cage drinking a beer while he watches the guy swing, and hey, Shane, you need to swing like just like this,
Or if the guy's hitting him out, he's yelling at other guys, come over and have a look. You see that?
You see what he's doing there? Do that.
The elbow. It's the elbow.
I mean, it's that just to me is what you think of when you think of that system. But the Dodgers,
how can they continue to draft they all have the same amount of picks, right? Dodgers have actually less picks because of the free agents they signed than Colorado. Same division, so they're in the same ballparks. Colorado's got a better home park than the Dodgers. Yet the Dodgers are able to bring guys up, including guys that are drafted later than the second round.
Yep.
And make the major league veterans for multiple years. Colorado struggled mightily to be able to develop their first rounders who they can draft a mixture of high school and college bats and still find and pitchers and still find a way to struggle. I remember hearing before that Colorado needs to heavily invest in breaking ball pitchers, and that could really help them. And then the next step was they need amazing defense, and that could help them. But yeah, Sound Monkey saying, have you shared the gospel of Brian Bencourt, America's #1 baseball prospect? We have discussed it. That I don't know if you would agree that that's where we came to a consensus on in the conversation.
No. On that note, let's talk about the big three of the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Yeah, we won't be able to escape them, but yeah. Okay, sorry. Let's not. I'm done, Rockies. I just had to quickly look at Bencourt's line last year. He was fine. He didn't advance, and that's why he didn't repeat on mine. So, Ben, do you want to go first for your big three from last year and then give us this year's? Thank you.
Last year, I had two guys that did graduate. I had Andy Pages and I had Gavin Stone on there. And then I also had Josue de Paula on my big three. And I will tell you that Josue does not make my big three this year. I have this Saseki guy. Is one of my big three.
Is that the guy from Oklahoma?
Rokai Saseki. But
okay.
And then Dalton Rushing, and I have Alex Freeland on there as well. More for proximity than anything, but a guy that I'm very certain that he can end up playing for the Dodgers this year quite a bit, I would wager.
Okay.
So those are my big three.
Your
Sasaki, Rushing, and Freeland.
Okay, so Freeland I almost looked at as a pop-up prospect because I just didn't hear at least, we did the show last year. I feel like we didn't talk about him. And if we did, it was in passing. So for me, he's a newer addition to it. So he's not on last year's list for me. And alert. What do they call it? Spoiler alert. He wasn't on my next three for 2024. But my big three for last year, Thyron Lazar. I can't say his name. He's not even a Dodger anymore. I don't care. He's with Detroit, the AAA team that's right by Windsor. Anyway, just kidding, Govier. Don't cancel me. I like this podcast. So anyway, he was traded to Detroit. He's still looking legit. Of course, now there's a lot more thought to his potential as a first baseman and catcher and how that might be experimented with. last year I also put Jackson Ferris, who was fresh off his trade from the Cubbies in Michael Busch deal with Hope. And he had an excellent line in 2024. I'm considering Ferris on the big three as a win for me last year. And then I had Kyle Hurt, and we're not going to talk about it. So this year, my big three, and I cheated. I repeated with my win in Jackson Ferris because I think Ferris could potentially come up and play big league innings. Why? He had 27 starts last year, a 3.20 ERA, 127 innings pitched, and 145 Ks. Meow. And the Dodgers always end up having, a dozen, 15 guys start. They're not expecting Kershaw till later in the year. Oh my God, no one's ever heard that sentence before. So there could be a way that they just decide to jump it with them, right? They are always in win now mode. They're talking about when will Ohtani come back into the rotation? There's a lot of things going on. Ferris might just be like a Caden Dana who slides in for a couple of starts at some point late in the year because it makes sense for their team because they're trying to win. They're not suppressing rookies. The other two rookies I've got have both recently come over. I don't know if they flew or took boats. Roki Sasaki is on the list, and Hae-Sung Kim, who I truly believe is a super sleeper out there. I hope to get him late in my home league because everywhere else he has been taken before I've had the opportunity, or in the one league that's an auction, he went for, I believe, like $23 American dollars per season. And that's a lot in that league. So I would really like, if any of you know anyone in my home league, don't tell them that my plan is to be able to get him, post round 10. I think a lot of the guys are afraid of Asians. I drafted a lot of them last year. It's just because they don't know about their playing time within their setup. And that's the deal with the Dodgers, is that a lot of people don't know what the deal is with Kim. I think he's going to be the everyday guy. So yeah, it's right.
Joe just says that's like your opinion, man.
100% is my opinion. And for anybody who's been in the Discord and who knows why I won't ever go back in, rest in power, Mr. Kim. So anyway, that's my 25 guys. Ferris, Hurt, Lorenzo. I'm not going to say his name anymore.
He's a Tiger now, so you don't need to worry about him now.
Yeah, and we've already covered Detroit, and I probably wrecked his name when I said it there. Anyway, Ben, who do you have for your next three for the Dodgers? The list could be so long, I know.
And last year, I immediately thought, once the Dodgers got their hands on him, that Jackson Ferris would be a guy you want to know, and so he was in mine last year. And then I had Yoendry Vargas, and then I just had a blanket thing of catchers. Because the Dodgers, honestly, coming into last year, they had catchers, and they've now moved two of the three guys.
I was just going to say, I can tell you who they are and where they went.
and Rushing is still there, and I mentioned him already. This year, my next three are Zaire Hope, Kellen Lindsay, and Yun Sok Young. If I said that correct, then good for me. Actually, our boy Anthony actually typed it out for you. That's exactly.
Yes. So he is international signing, the big guy they were able to get late in 2023. So he's now on your next three. So is that right, Ben? You said he's on your next three?
Yes. And everything I've seen is really, really positive about him so far. So that's
except the stat line, which you're just ignoring because he's developing. Like he statistically looks risky, but that's not what you're going for as a 19-year-old, same as Jackson Ferris, right? 1 year difference, but they're not in the same spot from a development standpoint.
No. And that's just it. Is, last year I'm looking at, find me a guy with that build that Ferris has and going into the Dodgers system, and let's see what he looks like in a year, because I bet you that's going to be nice. I kind of think the same thing. Give the Dodgers another year with is it Zhang Yang? I'm sorry. I apologize for not pronouncing the name correctly. But one thing that I did hear overwhelmingly is once he got up to A ball, it looked really good.
This is Hyun-Suk Jang you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Once he got out, for some reason, he was striking everybody and their monkey's uncle out in in Arizona, but he was also giving up a lot of runs. But once he got up to in the Cal League, no less, but up to full season ball, he showed out much better. He got his strikeouts, but he also was doing a lot better on the run prevention end of things as well. So, but yeah, and Joe's going to get on our case. Maybe he will when Robbie talks about his next big three.
Joe, you're going to be proud of me, buddy. You're going to be proud of me. Yeah, so my next three, and of course I'm stalling for time to write in my timestamps here. My next three for the Dodgers in 2024. I went with 4 because, like the Dodgers, I cheat. Just kidding, Dodgers don't cheat. That's Houston. But I had Austin Gauthier, who I just really liked last year. Yeah, so I had him on the list. The 3 youthful guys, Zahir Hope, which was a Cubs guy that moved over, so I did the same thing. I understand you might not like it, but I did it. And you know what, guys? I was right. I was right. He had an excellent year, and everybody friggin' loves him. I feel like I was the high guy a year ago, and I'll talk about him again in a minute. Easton Shelton, who was undrafted in 23 and was like the Nevada player of the year, high schooler of the year, something like that. He didn't get enough time last year for me to really like understand what's going on with him. So I'm giving the Dodgers one more year, or sorry, like this was last year. I'm going to give him one more year before I really make a statement on him. And then I did have Hyun-Suk Jang as well from the 2023 international class because the Dodgers had extra money left over. I hope the Blue Jays did that with all that money they took on from Cleveland when they made poor deals. Yeah. And they could sign somebody in, season to make up for it. Anyway, this year, 2025, I'm repeating Hope. And I got to say, why am I the guy who's early on him? And now I'm telling everybody to like temper your expectations. I've heard people being as crazy as saying that he is Soto-like, Britton Allen, and he just doesn't have the pro reps yet.
I've seen him in the top 10. And not on like crazy lists, on like very reputable sites with him in the top 10.
I would say his them I'm not 100% sure on. I have seen at least, I'm thinking now at least 4 lists. He's inside the top 30 in 4 lists. And that is crazy to me for the amount of pro ball he's got. Because I don't look at what he's done like as far as his own stat line, which is of course the fantasy determinator of value for the player. What are they really going to do? Because for us, we need them to do those things. But competition, he's above his age in competition, and that's awesome, and he's doing really well. But he needs to have a full season where he's not pushed and he just plays and dominates and does something crazy. And then, he went to the AFL last year, and I think that was a big prompt for people to be excited about him. Right. And that wasn't the best thing for him, but I still think bright future ahead, to the moon for his fantasy value. And if you were smart enough to pick him up last year, I've dealt him in a league, the only league I had him in, and I don't regret it for a second because I mentioned to you, Ben, about it. It was like I got Chase Delauder, who of course, another friggin' surgery for him, but Moises Ballesteros, I got in that deal, and Cole Young, I also got in that deal. And I was willing to make it because like by the time Hope is making a true impact, I think the other guys could also have made real impacts and made my team better. And then I've drafted and da. So I also have, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, just to kind of put some interesting perspective on this, I do this thing where I take 6 different lists. It's Baseball America, Baseball Prospectus, Kylie McDaniel at ESPN, Keith Law at The Athletic, Fangraphs, and the Pipeline, all of their top 100s. And
the Pipeline's a great one for fantasy because people just assume value based on that list, which is crazy to me. But
so I put those all into a spreadsheet. I average things out and all this sort of stuff, and it's always interesting just to kind of see where the variance is. Hope was number 8 on the BP list, and he did not appear on Eric Longenhagen's Fangraphs list. So that's a very interesting. When most of the lists were in the 50 to 75 range, but I just really thought that to know where
the Welsh has them. I'm very curious.
That'd be a good.
If you were at all
he's
a prospect
very
guy,
highly of him.
Yes, and he also gets eyes on these guys because he's in and around Arizona. This is Chris Welsh, for anybody who's wondering, at In This League Fantasy Baseball podcast, which I would title, although they haven't been around long enough to deserve the legendary title. He and Bogman are legendary to me. When I first really got into fantasy, they were the first podcast that I truly enjoyed because they had fun while they podcasted, and I thought that was a great idea. So when I eventually got into that, I said, we should enjoy this. We shouldn't be serious hardline news. We are here to inform and entertain, and ideally, show off a bit of our personalities. Obviously, Ben and I are so sexy, but that aside, the information is what you're here for, but the personality, we hope, is why you come back more and more. Anyway, back on point. So I had Hope. We talked about Hope and the Hope. No, I had two more because Hope's the only guy I've mentioned so far.
Oh, because I'm sorry. I assumed because you had told Joe that he'd be proud of you.
Yeah. So Emil Morales is on my list. I do have the 18-year-olds. He killed the DSL. 152 at bats, 14 home runs, 12 stolen bases. I'm so sorry. Was somebody just mentioning that Kelvin Hidalgo did something similar? I'm not listening to you, person. He had a 342 average, 478 OBP, and a 690 slug. He should skip A ball. He should just go straight to Double A, and we'll see what he can. Anyway, we'll see where he goes with the Dodgers this year.
I would say he may or may not be Leo DeVries. Let's be careful with that. But
that's what I was going to say. That's why I went back to Hidalgo. We've seen what happens to DSL killers. They die. Now, those might just be Betancourt and Hidalgo, and die meaning that all of a sudden something gets zapped, like the power. We'll see. Morales looks so good. It's exciting. And then the other guy, Ben, I feel like is just a forgotten pitcher within a loaded Dodgers organization. And that's Maddox Bruns, Bruns, the 21 first-round pick. He missed time in 24, but he was a high school drafted lefty, and he is ticking my boxes. He and Jackson Ferris are both on the same side of the bump. They could be moving up together, potentially. We'll see what goes on with them this year. But the Dodgers are so fascinating. They have 6 legitimate MLB starters healthy today. They have, 3 guys that are injured, potentially coming back, and whatever you think of Dustin May. Like, it is so loaded that I don't know what kind of turnover they're going to need to have, whether they move these prospects out, whether they, do something with the major leaguers, whether it's injury or what. But there's so much talent at the high end here, even though Bruns, I don't think is coming up this year. I'm not suggesting that. I'm saying he's kind of a slow play. Ferris, I think, is the one who could jump up. But Bruns will be Rule 5 eligible next year if he's not put on at this point. You do look a little Stone Cold Steve Austin. Thank you, Anthony, for saying that. I've got Hope, Morales, and Bruns.
All right. So, although my daughters did tell me that I look much better. No, that I look much better with the longer beard. So I told them that every so often you got to let the cheeks breathe. But this is as much as I let it happen.
Back on. Yeah. Not those cheeks. Anyway, okay, so I don't think there's anyone else in the Dodgers, right?
No,
they only have those.
They have a pretty shallow system. So, but one name that you and I both have not mentioned is a guy that I had on last year on my big 3, and that's Jose DePaula. And if you look at the numbers, you're going to think, oh, this is a future stud. I watched him quite a bit because I was hearing folks talk about him as a potential, along the lines of Hope, is like a guy who should be talked about as a top 15, top 20 for next year. And I went, well, wait a minute. I watched some of his stuff. He really, really feasts on A-ball fastballs. Anything good breaking, he struggles with.
Okay.
But he's just good enough in A-ball that he was able to get beyond that. I know that that's not the common discussion on him because he was something like a 70 walks and 80 strikeouts sort of guy. So everyone's like, oh, pretty solid plate discipline. Yeah, in A-ball. He really got fooled on solid breaking stuff that in the 4 or 5 games of his that I watched. And I think upper minors is going to be a really big test at the plate. And then Joe is spot on. There are no instincts in the outfield. It is really,
7
really
errors.
ugly.
No
Really
Kyle
ugly.
Henley right there, right? We are not looking at a Henley level defender.
Not at all. However, here's a really good defender that they do have. And that is, well, actually, there are a couple of them that I could mention in a row here. But Eduardo Quintero. 23 Venezuelan IFA that does not play catcher.
Yet. Does not play catcher yet or now.
like the famous Venezuelan signees, the Acuñas, he plays the outfield. And he's the raw power hasn't shown up in the games yet, but I'm told he has really fun batting practice rounds. So
okay,
his
fun approach is different. Yeah.
If he can add that to his speed and his defense, this could really be a guy that explodes next year. But this is a deep enough system to where a guy didn't even make my next 3 because that's the system. But anyway,
let me just tell the people about the line for Quintero: 330, 459, 449, 3 home runs, but 29 stolen bases. And this is what I really like about young guys: 41 walks to 45 strikeouts.
Yeah,
that is very encouraging.
That caught my eye right away. But then I started to hear all the things about his batting practice and then also his defense, and I was like, "Ooh, this could be a really fun guy." Kendall George is the one who basically is the Dodgers high school draftee version of Bradfield Jr., of Enrique Bradfield Jr. That's basically what they've got here is a lot of speed, a lot of defense, not a lot of anything else. So they're kind of hoping that continues to develop along those lines as he goes up their system. But and then Joe mentioned him, and there we go. I found his comment. He says, "I can't wait to see what the Dodgers do with Mike Sirota." If you don't know who Mike Sirota is, Mike Sirota went to Northeastern, small school, was widely considered coming into last year's drafts or last year's college season as the best defensive outfielder available in the draft. Then really struggled
Henley
on offense.
Level defense. Level of defense.
Absolutely. Might even be Henley plus.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Can't be better than a 1,000-point defender.
I'm just saying. So he had offensive struggles, except they weren't really struggles. It's just he wasn't as good as he was the year before. And so he slipped down to the 3rd round. Then he got traded in the deal that sent Gavin Lux to the Reds. The Reds picked him up, and then he ended up getting traded to the Dodgers. And I could absolutely see him doing very well in that developmental system. So that's my offensive players. Do you have any other hitters that you would like to mention in the Dodgers system? I mean, just a couple.
No. I was gonna say, there's always guys like Jake Geloff, who was drafted in the 2nd round in 2023. But honestly, it's almost Dodger fatigue. There's just guys. He did go to the AFL. It did not go well, but his 24 in general was not great. OBP was good. Average was not. He did have 10 home runs, 20 stolen bases. So depending on what you're looking for from a stat line perspective, he is a fade, but I think it's one of those slow plays because how old is he? 22. This is his age 23 year. He should be at AA. If it doesn't come together this year, I'm saying it doesn't come together. If he doesn't have a higher batting average, it's going to be harder to see him break in with the Dodgers. When James Outman did it, he was not deserving from a prospect pedigree standpoint. He wasn't drafted highly, but he just came up and basically beat every level and then forced his way in and had an excellent debut and period of time before it failed for him. We need to see that kind of thing. So let's see. I don't think I have anybody else. There was a DSL guy I'm trying to find. Was it Ching Hsinko? That's the guy. CHING-HSIENKO. And his last year in the DSL was okay. But the OBP was what I was most interested in. That he had 11 walks to 7 strikeouts, but he only had 29 at bats, and I didn't get to see what I wanted. So this is a year that I'm just kind of like, let's see what he can do on the offensive side. But that's it. They have no one else, none other guys.
Exactly.
Except for pitchers.
Yeah. Now, one guy that we did get to see last year, he's not by any means a front of the rotation type of guy, but Justin Roblowski in a lot of places would be.
I saw him pitch.
He would be a number 5. He would be a solid number 5 that would be on a team, and number 4 upside. This would absolutely be a guy who would be a swingman / 5th starter for somebody in the majors, but he's on the Dodgers. And so he's going to be their backfill in AAA. Eric Swan was really a fun guy to watch. He'll be fun to watch after the AFL. 6'6", 250-pound boy with stuff that definitely matches the size, but control kind of is in and out and in and out. And so if he can control that stuff, this would be a really fun guy to watch. But yeah, he's a big old boy. Yes. Yeah. Well, not quite that Eric Swan. Different Eric Swan. Eric with a Q, by the way, just so
ERIQ. That's right.
ERIQ.
Yeah.
But yeah, the other one, big arm guy, Eduardo Enriquez. We got to see him at the very end of last year in the bullpen for the Dodgers. But this is a guy who just jumped up, 3 levels last year, 4 levels. But anyway, was pumping 103, 104. And just, his stuff was really impressive. But, it's also pretty much fastball only right now. I'm betting that he goes down to the minors again into AAA, and they're going to work on here's a second and maybe a third pitch this guy's going to then come back up and be just an absolute monster at the back of a bullpen. And then last but not least that I have on here, Wyatt Crowell was a pitcher they got out of Florida State, 4th round of 23. He was a reliever in college and then had Tommy John, and they were making him into a starter. Got a really not quite a sidearm angle, but a very low 3/4 angle, and he just hides the ball. You can see where this could work, but he has 5 pitches from that angle. And for a lefty like that, this is the type of organization that can take their time with a pitcher like that, and he could turn into something really nice.
Yeah, 43 and 2/3 innings last year, 59 Ks. I'm always looking at walks, 24 walks, but we can look at what a walk is within some of these guys when you start to watch how they're doing things. But Ben, here's the big, fun, exciting thing. He hit 13 guys.
Yeah. I saw that. I was like, ooh, well, but yeah.
I wonder if I was fortunate enough to see him when I did my Midwestern swing last year, because I did watch
to see some Great Lakes.
Yeah, I did watch Roblowski for the Dodgers last year when MJ Gobi and I met up, and we saw Ohtani almost get the cycle last year in Detroit, and then Detroit came back in extra innings and won the game, and it was excellent. Roblowski just ran out of gas in that one. But again, coming back from Tommy John surgery and promoted, I'm sure, shocked to be up. I think it was his 2nd or 3rd start. He was quite interesting. So the Dodgers are loaded up. I was trying to find maybe like a sleeper type guy to say, Brady Smith, but he was drafted, I think last year.
Bobby Miller. Oh, wait. Oh.
Bobby Miller. Yeah. But they had some guys get drafted. Yeah. Poor Chad. Did he get that tattoo? I remember there was talk that he was going to get one.
No, he won.
What happened?
Bet,
he won the bet
because he bet that Bobby Miller would not be good. And I don't know that he expected him to quite be I think he expected an injury.
Yeah, but there was a canceling factor if somebody got hurt.
Yeah.
But anyway, the one guy we didn't talk about last year or this year because he graduated was Yoshinobu Yamamoto.
Yeah.
And we were discussing him before the show because we're friends and we talk, and saying that like the line, what we've seen isn't $300+ million worthy. And last year he must not have signed when we went through this, and now he has since graduated.
Well,
but
it's one of those that's a tough thing just because it's easy to put Sasaki on these lists. And I can absolutely respect someone who says maybe not, but Sasaki makes sense because he's still a legit guy that has to go through the IFA system. When you're a guy like Yamamoto who's coming over and you're old enough to where you don't have to do that anymore, that's where it gets to be kind of hairy. Like, is that guy actually a prospect or not? And
right, they signed a major league deal, and like that's Kim. Like I put Kim on mine. He signed a major league deal. Sasaki, much like Ohtani, has options and could be sent down.
And for what it's worth, Yamamoto's done well controlling the ball so far this spring. Numbers don't look good because I don't know if he's aiming, but it certainly is not kind of the free and easy in the zone pitching like he did last year. But because stuff in the zone was tough for folks to square up on it, and they're getting a good solid hit on stuff in spring training thus far. Now, it's spring training, folks, but yeah, that's a good one to remember is Yamamoto. And if you want to consider the absolute opposite ends of the spectrum in the development size of a player, like the physical size of a player that's coming over from the same country, Yamamoto 1 year and Sasaki the next year is about as well as you can do in that, because Sasaki he's a legit large human being in his physical build. And then you have Yamamoto, who's 5'10" and 175 pounds, dripping wet, so.
Yeah, the effort in which Yamamoto needs to pitch and be successful versus Sasaki is night and day.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. So. But that's all I got. You got any more fun things to talk about with
that's
Dodgers?
It. Time to wrap it up. We've discussed the fact that we were going to do a off-season type update podcast. So look for that one coming out soon.
Yes.
And keep joining us. We've got 3 of these left. 3 of these left.
One.
Yeah. That's it. We've done 2 NLs. We get to
Miami,
talk about Milwaukee, the Mets
couple
next.
Really fun systems next year. Next week, Miami, Milwaukee, who I love both of those systems for different reasons, and then the Mets, which is not a bad system, but it's just not the same level as Miami and Milwaukee's. But so it's going to be fun to do that. And because Joe mentioned it, I think we need to close with an advertisement.
Oh, okay.
And then we can shut her down after that.
Need a place to go after a hard day's work? Well, head on out to the Sundowner for the classiest, sassiest experience in French table dancing. The Sundowner, Lundy's Lane, Niagara Falls, Canada, open 6 days a week, noon to 1 a.m. Come in for a great lunch special or a full-course meal anytime. Always full bank exchange on your currency. The Sundowner, an easy drive from where you are right now. Visit us soon. We've got first class sass.